California's Proposition 19, legalizing marijuana, went down. Proposals regarding medical marijuana failed in South Dakota and Oregon, and in Arizona, Proposition 203 is failing, but it's close. The state is still counting. After all those voter rebuffs, should the pro-marijuana movement just surrender? To respond, we have Alan St. Pierre. He's live from Washington. He is executive director of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Good to see you again, Alan. So,
Good evening, Don.
Earlier tonight, the White House Director for Drug Control Policy, I spoke to him. He gave me his reaction to Proposition 19 going down. Take a listen. We'll talk about it.
They brought in top-notch pro-legalization folks, brought in top-notch, highly paid publicists, campaign managers. They completely outspent and outmaneuvered the grassroots opposition, and yet they were handed a significant defeat. I think when people get the right information about marijuana, they see that legalizing it is not a sound move.
Okay, so what do you say to that? There was a lot of money spent, and you all still lost.
Well, about 90% of the money came in the last 6 weeks of the election. It would have been terrific had it come back in July and August. But generally speaking, in this country, there is a zeitgeist to legalize marijuana. In the last 20 years, we've gone from 20% of the American public supporting it to 45%, according to a poll a couple of weeks ago. 55% of Californians in advance of this election said in polls they wanted to legalize it, and we came in at 46, 47%.
So you say it's only a matter, you think it's only a matter of time then, is that what you're saying?
This is a fait accompli. Okay. Absolutely.
All right, so some would say, though, Alan, that this was the election year for you. Everyone was desperate for funding, especially California, and legalizing marijuana was still rejected. At the very least, do you think that all you need to do is change your strategy? Maybe legal marijuana is enough. Maybe you need to be more pragmatic about it and think in terms of baby steps and just focus on the medical marijuana issue?
Well, for 40 years at NORML, we started with decriminalization, and then we went to medicalization, and now the obvious place is legalization. And so California joins Oregon, Washington, Maine, and some other states that will probably be having some initiatives again in 2012. We actually ourselves...
Let me ask you this, and we'll talk about in 2012. Is this, though, older voters versus younger voters rather than conservative sort of versus liberal voters? Because when you look at younger people, and I don't have the stats here, but I think younger people turned out in droves to support this and then was sort of rejected by older voters. And that's who turned out to the polls, especially for midterms.
Midterms, absolutely, particularly with this conservative agenda and the Tea Party, that was clear. We've always noticed in our polling and focus groups is a terrific breakdown between older Americans and younger, but the baby boomers themselves have such a different experience in, say, the World War II generation. So as the years go on, as Nate Silver of the New York Times has predicted, 60% of the American public will want marijuana legal in the next 10 years. So this issue is not going away.
Okay, listen, we were talking about three states proponents of pot plan to introduce measures in 2012. What states are they?
California, Washington, and Oregon, and Colorado all are states that are primed to do this.
Okay, so they'll have similar proposals, but there were some valid concerns over Proposition 19 in California. The whole workplace issue about employers having a harder time firing employees who smoke pot. How are you going to handle that the next time around when that comes up?
Well, be very clear, because just the same way you can't come to work drunk, I can't come to work stoned or drunk.
Right.
These are clear custom, whether or not the law addresses it or not. So for me, it was kind of a red herring. It's clear. You can't come to the workplace impaired.
Yeah. What did you learn from this, and how are you going to use it in 2012?
Well, we learned we have to address that. We have to address drug driving, make it clear that you cannot drive while impaired on marijuana, and that when you're using it in the presence of children, that can be a concern.
Yeah, and what about the misconception? I was watching a show there, I think it was Bill Maher, and I forget the guy who lit up the supposed joint. Yeah. He goes, you know, people, oh, I see spiders or whatever. And people actually think that, you know, people on marijuana do that. Are there any misconceptions? Do you think that you sort of missed the boat in any way about clearing up some of the misconceptions about pot? Because, according to doctors, self-admittedly, they will tell you that the reaction from alcohol is often more violent and worse than the reaction to marijuana use.
Oh, to be sure, sometimes we're our own worst enemy regarding stupid stoner. Watching the World Series this year and all the reporters that were downwind and having to do live feeds while marijuana was being used around them, that was irresponsible. You can't use marijuana in the street like that. So So again, sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
All right. Alan St. Pierre, thank you from NORML.